Modern Dadhood. Modern Dadhood podcast.
Mark Andrew.
Mom? I'll be right home, Mom. I'm just down the street.
That gag never gets old. Let's make a podcast episode.
All right. Okay. We can do that. That's fine. Start it off.
Well, this is Modern Dadhood. And as we've said since the first episode, it's an ongoing conversation about the joys, challenges, and general insanity of being a dad in this moment. Right, Mark?
I'm Robert Krolwich.
I'm Jad Abumrad.
Oh, wait. That's a different podcast. No. Yes, I'm Mark. You're Adam.
That's right. And what's something that's uniquely relevant to this show about us?
I can do that thing where when you eat, you put a whole cherry with the stem in your mouth, and you can remove the stem from the cherry, eat the cherry, and then tie the stem in a knot with your tongue.
Okay, I suppose that's unique to fatherhood. Well, I should probably tell you now that my hidden talent is putting a piece of wet spaghetti up my nose.
No, you can't.
Pulling it out my mouth and flossing.
That's incredible.
No, I can't do it. Although as a kid, I was definitely jealous of people who could do that.
That does take some serious talent, some serious control over the gag reflex.
It's also pretty disgusting.
I think you were getting at the fact that that I'm a dad to twin boy 4 and 3/4-year-olds.
Getting close
2
to
months
5.
away.
Okay. All right. Big things happen at 5.
I hope they start listening better.
Hey, my daughters are almost 9 and almost 6. And listening is still a thing that doesn't happen in our house. So
Son of...
Doesn't mean it's going to be the same for you, but, fair warning, it's going to be the same for you.
I appreciate that. Appreciate the fair warning. Okay. What are we talking about today? We have an agenda?
I did want to say this. This is part of our opening spiel. Dads and moms who are listening, Modern Dadhood, all of our episodes can be found on our website, moderndadhood.com, or anywhere you can listen to podcasts. And that's places like Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher, Spotify, and wherever you listen, please do subscribe and take just a couple seconds to leave us a very quick and simple rating and a review. That's what helps us to get the podcast out to more people. That, and of course, just telling friends about it, word of mouth.
Every time you tell a friend about the show, an angel gets its wings.
It's very sweet. Did you just make that up?
I did. I was thinking about angels, and I was thinking about how they get their wings, and it just came out.
Do you want to share who the guest is on the episode today?
Oh, I'm really excited for today's guest. We spoke with Jermaine Moore. He founded the Mars Hill Group, which does training, development, and consulting for leadership training and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we talked about a lot of great stuff with Jermaine.
I actually learned a lot from that conversation.
I often write notes when we're interviewing someone, but usually the notes are for the interview. You know, like as we're talking, like you jot a little thing down because you want to come back to it or because it relates to another question that you have. But when talking with Jermaine, I was just writing notes for myself for the future because he just dropped so many really good nuggets that I did not want to forget. And I'm sure our guests are going to get some great stuff out of the interview.
It was a good long chat, and we'll be sharing it in just a couple minutes. Oh, hey, man, I told you about this a while back, but I want to tell our listeners in January 26th through 29th, I'm going to be attending an event called Podfest Multimedia Expo in Orlando, Florida.
You're not just going to be attending.
I'm going to be leading a breakout session, speaking to attendees about how to use video to market a podcast effectively.
Sick.
Grab a ticket and come down, hang out. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm excited to meet a whole bunch of new people down there and learn a bunch of things about how to make our podcast better. Mark, are you going to come to this or what?
I think I'm gonna get my act together, and I too will be joining you at Podfest as an attendee. I'll be wandering around, checking out some of the sessions and some of the workshops and whatnot, hoping to also learn a thing or two.
Dads and moms, you can learn more about Podfest at podfestexpo.com. Yeah, cool. So that's Podfest. What else? Holidays coming up?
We are hurtling like a train going downhill that has lost its brakes towards Christmas. And I don't know about y'all, but not ready.
Barreling downhill, just overflowing, just packed to the gills with stuff, with single-use plastics and just paper, like just wasteful paper.
Cardboard boxes that have cardboard boxes that have like little plastic windows so you can see the toy, but then you get past that part, but then the toy is locked down tight with the screw, the plastic screw things that hold them on now, and you got to find where all those are.
15 little plastic, tightening straps that you got to cut out.
Not a AA battery in sight, so when you finally do get to it, it doesn't do the thing it's supposed to do.
Everything has a zillion little pieces, and if you lose one or two, it doesn't function anymore.
I'm already over it.
Yeah, my blood pressure's through the roof about this.
It hasn't even started, and I'm already over it.
Yeah.
No, I'm sure it's going to be great.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, can't wait.
Christmas. Woohoo.
No, the girls are very much looking forward to it, and we are too. I feel like it's become popular, and I like this a lot, and it's something that we do to some extent with our girls, is like we say, all right, so a couple weeks before Christmas, we're going to go through the playroom and we're going to just sort of do a clean out, and anything that you don't play with that's in good shape, let's choose some stuff that we're going to donate to other families, to families who, aren't as fortunate as us and who would really enjoy these things that are sitting here that you are no longer playing with. But I just think that the idea of it, getting them thinking about other people and hopefully feeling grateful for, what they have. I think it's a good lesson for them.
I love that. That's a great idea.
Well, listen, I want to keep talking about Christmas, but I do feel like it's important that we get into our recent chat with Jermaine Moore because I just got so much out of that conversation that I can't wait for our listeners to hear it.
Roll tape.
Jermaine Moore is one of the founders of the Mars Hill Group, a training, development, and consulting firm focused on leadership training and diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. He is a father of 4 kids, and we are honored to welcome him to Modern Dadhood. Jermaine, thank you so much for making time to be with us this morning.
Oh, Adam, thank you so much for having me, Mark. So good to see you as well.
How are you doing? 4 kids. Tell us a little bit about your family.
I'm tired. That's what I am. 4 kids and tiring. But the family is doing absolutely wonderful. They are a bit dispersed right now. I have 2 boys, 2 girls. My son Baruch is in Ohio. He just got married last year, so he is starting his life and his family out there. My son Avery was recently in Atlanta, and my daughter Mel is in Boston, and my youngest, who is still home, she's 17. She's currently in Spain doing a semester abroad. So They are kind of all over the world, I should say, but all is well.
Yeah, you're not kidding. That's quite a spread.
Yeah. It was wild when they were young. Actually, my oldest, Baruch, we adopted when he was 15. We adopted him about 10 years ago from Ethiopia. Wow. So it was 3. My oldest Avery, my 2 girls, and then we added Baruch, and so then it became 4, which is interesting because I always wanted 4. I grew up as an only child, and I didn't realize the 4th was going to come through adoption. But happy to have him; he's been a blessing ever since.
That's incredible.
So, Jermaine, I want to first thank you for the very important work that you do in educating people about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Obviously, it's a huge responsibility. And it really seems like the people who have experienced your training and interacted with you just speak so highly of you. So we're really, again, very happy to have you here. I wonder maybe if you could share a little bit about how you got into this particular line of work.
Yeah, so I had the pleasure of working with a few wonderful organizations and helping with their learning and development. Just some organizations that really focused on strong cultures and learning and developing, supporting those cultures, and worked with some great leadership, great CEOs. It was fairly natural for me to move into the diversity, equity, inclusion space for a couple of reasons. One, I have a lot of passion for this work. It's my own lived experience. And I felt that if there was anything I could do to really make our community a better place for my children, then it's something that I'm interested in doing. But I also realized that of all the things that I do, I don't know if there's anything that can have the impact that diversity, equity, and inclusion can have. Because not only can we impact current generations, but generations to come. And so, and of course, on the heels of the George Floyd murder, there was a lot of organizations that felt, they wanted to do more work in this space. They weren't quite sure what to do. They knew they wanted to do something. They recognized there were some issues that we were all wrestling with. And we've been fortunate enough to be able to come alongside a lot of those organizations and help.
We're going to add plenty of links in our show notes so that folks listening can sort of educate themselves on DEI. But just since we have you, curious if you could give sort of a brief summary of what diversity, equity, and inclusion means.
Oh, what a great question, because there's a lot of confusion on what it is. So typically in DE&I work, when we're talking about diversity, we're talking about ways in which we identify, and we have many different identities, but the identities that we focus on includes race, gender, sexual orientation, age, religion, socioeconomic status, which is often forgotten aspect of diversity, neurodiversity, which just acknowledges that for some of us, our brains are wired differently than others, and we have to leave room for those differences. And so diversity itself, these identities are very important to us. Actually, our identities inform how we walk through life, how we experience the world, their relationships with one another, with institutions, with our community, with history. Our identities are very, very important to us. So diversity work specifically focuses on those identities that have been or are being marginalized, pushed aside, underrepresented, underserved, oppressed, discriminated against. Diversity work tends to focus on those identities. Inclusion is really asking, what are we doing with that diversity? And, how are we leveraging, this diversity? It's not enough to say, all right, we're diverse, but what are we doing to enjoy some of the benefits of our newly diverse teams or our newly diverse communities? And when I'm working with organization inclusion, focuses on creating a culture where all feel welcomed, valued, respected, seen, and heard. If you have everyone, no matter how they identify, they feel welcome, valued, respected, seen, and heard, it creates a sense of belonging. And that sense of belonging is so very important to us. Like actually, it's only second to our desire to be loved. We all want to be loved and cared for, every single one of us. I don't care what you say. I don't care how hard you think you are. We all want to be loved and cared for. But right after that is our desire to feel that we belong. And so inclusion is trying to create this environment where you feel that you belong here and you can thrive here and you can be your authentic self here in this space. And when we do that, by the way, for organizations, productivity goes up, retention goes up, turnover goes down, creativity goes up, innovation goes up. There are actual benefits to being diverse and creating this place where people can be their authentic selves. So that's inclusion. And when we think about equity, equity just acknowledges that the playing field isn't level for all. Because of these identities, there are certain barriers for some. Equity work tries to level the playing field to give people not equal outcomes, right? It's not guaranteeing equal outcomes. That's a misconception when it comes to equity. But what it's trying to do is ensure people have equal opportunity to thrive, to succeed, equal access to these opportunities. And then it's kind of on you what you do with it. So if we look at diversity, we're thinking of diverse people, and these radically different people gives us radically different perspectives. Equity, we're typically looking at policy and practices. So you may see things like pay equity. So we're looking at our pay policies, for instance, to ensure there is no gap between what we pay women and what we pay men for the same position, right? And then inclusion, of course, is culture work. It's not only being in the room and having a seat at the table, but feeling empowered that your voice is going to be heard and being listened to.
I just love the way that you put this a minute ago. Everyone wants to be welcomed, valued, respected, seen, and heard.
You got it, Mark.
And that's just it's just so powerful because everybody fits right into that. Everybody. It doesn't matter the differences, the where you come from, or what you subscribe to in your personal life or whatnot. That's just wonderful.
Yeah, Mark, and sometimes like people, for whatever reason, have this idea that this work is exclusive. It's like at the heart of it is inclusivity. So when I say everyone, like you said, feels welcome, valued, respect, that's everyone. That's good for us all, no matter how you identify. But we want to make sure we're creating a culture where no one is left out, right, from feeling welcome, valued, respected, seen, and heard. And that is at the core of the work of what we do.
So I want to chat, Jermaine, about fatherhood and parenthood and how we can instill this practice, in our kids so that when they are of an age where they're going into a workforce, or even before that, even as they just advance through elementary school, middle school, high school, college, if they choose to do higher ed, that it's more of just a way of life for them as opposed to something that they have to be trained to think about.
Yes.
But before I ask about that, you had mentioned the murder of George Floyd as sort of a milestone when you started to see more companies making efforts to incorporate DE&I into things like recruiting, presumably. I guess my question is, it's great, that in the wake of such a horrible tragedy that companies are thinking about this and want to move in this direction and strive to learn and be open-minded and inclusive. But you also must see a lot of companies who are doing it to sort of check a box. They understand on paper, right, that it's important, but maybe don't fully understand the true value that you just described.
Yeah.
How do you train people to approach this stuff in a way that's earnest as opposed to just sort of following a protocol?
Yeah, Adam, it's always a struggle. That's the challenge, right? How do we ensure this isn't some check off the box activity, something that we do and then never think about or pick up again? And so where I start with organizations is with culture. I talk about the importance of culture. I explain what culture is, and culture, our values are really our cultural cornerstones, right? So anytime I introduce diversity, equity, and inclusion, I try to make the case that DEI lives within our culture. And to ensure that it's not this check off the box activity, we have to connect it to our values. And basically the question that we're asking is, how does this allow us to live out our values every day? How does this allow us to be the best version of ourselves? And so people start to realize, where this work lives is in our culture and integrated into everything that we do. And when we do that, we become the best version of ourselves, as an organization. So we start with culture. We help people make the connection to the culture, and that tends to move the needle a little bit. McKinsey & Company have also done 3 global studies, and just more than them, to really tout the benefit of how DEI affects the bottom line. And what every one of their studies continue to confirm that companies that embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion, they compare those companies with between the bottom quartile companies that are not embracing DE&I. They consistently outperform by significant percentages. And so we have to make the business case as well, because for some people, saying it's the right thing to do is not enough. I wish it was for every organization. Right. But for others, you have to say, all right, this is how it's going to affect your bottom line. This is why it's worth the investment to create this type of space. And some organizations get it and they embrace it, and it makes perfect sense for them. For others, it's a little bit more of a struggle.
That makes a lot of sense. So now sort of moving over to the parenting side and thinking about how we talk to our kids about this, but also just model it for our kids so that it's something that again is just normal for them, as it should be. obviously we live in an area in southern Maine that's very non-diverse, at least as far as racial diversity, right?
Yeah.
Living in an area where there is such a lack of racial diversity specifically, and being in the line of work that you're in, has this conversation always been sort of prominent in your family? How did you talk to your own kids about it as they were growing up?
Yeah, and you're right. We are not diverse here in Maine. Maine is the whitest state in the country. That's government statistics. Vermont is number 2. So there's a couple issues with that. Well, one, it prevents a lot of us here in these areas to have exposure to these differences. And so a lot of it is new. And that exposure can be very important in our own education. And so because we lack real contact, real relationships, we rely on other sources to inform what people are like. And unfortunately, when we rely on media to kind of tell stories about people that are different from you, usually those stories aren't very, very positive. And so that's one barrier that we have to get through. The second barrier in this area is because we don't have, certain types of diversity here. We can almost get complacent and think, well, these aren't issues that we have to deal with here. This isn't a problem for us here. Yeah. And that is that is a very difficult one to get through. But I'm one, and I've always believed that, particularly as parents, particularly as a dad, that more is caught than taught, right? So we can say whatever we want, but our children are watching us. They're paying attention to us. They're seeing how we walk through this world. They're seeing how we navigate some of these situations, and they're going to take their cues from us. And so that's the number one thing that we can do as parents. If we're living it, we're walking it, it'll teach our children to do the same. If they see you care about it, they start to care about it, and they're taking their cues from us. But it is a little bit harder here in an area that's not so diverse, right? Where you don't have a lot of those learning opportunities right in front of you.
Yeah, that lack of exposure. So I'm not originally from around here, but I'm from rural Pennsylvania. So it's a lot of dairy farms and cornfields and stuff like that. Yeah. And I mean, I think I lived for a long time in New York City. Pendulum swung really far for me in one regard. And I spent a lot of time in New York City, and then moved up here. And now that I have children of my own, I'm seeing, so many of the similarities that my kids are growing up with that I had growing up, that were part of the reason why I said, see ya, I'm going to New York City for a little while. Yes. And I think my parents did do a lot in terms of modeling, but I know that right now I'm starting to struggle with this realization of the real lack of, just generally speaking, exposure that my kids are going to get. Yes. It seems like there's something I can do, but I still also just feel really stuck, in going about that the right way. And some of that is because I'm aware that I have these unconscious biases. Yes. That I mean, you're only ever kind of so aware of those things. Yes. And I'm not really getting at a question other than I wonder, like, what are some things that I can do, or some resources that I can go to sort of aid me in this journey of bringing that exposure to my kids.
Yeah, Mark, I love that. There are a couple things we can do, and I can relate. It's interesting. When I moved here from Philadelphia, we had a house right outside of Philadelphia near Willow Grove, and very diverse. Our street was very diverse, and I almost took it for granted, actually. When I moved my kids here, I didn't realize that I would miss that aspect of diversity so much. I didn't realize how important that would be for my children, to be honest with you. Like I almost just took it for granted. It was something I grew up around. It was like, oh, this is just what it is. And then, when it's gone, you realize, oh, wait, that was such an enriching, important piece of my childhood, to be around these differences. And what I'm seeing, and I'll answer your question here in a second, but as my kids get older, I'm finding they yearn for that diversity. And what I'm finding is they're leaving Maine. Like they're going where they can find, just like you went to New York They're finding their own places where they can be around this diversity. Even though they didn't quite have it, there's something inside that they miss it and they want it. And so, as regarding our kids, see, there's an advantage that our youth have today that we didn't have, and it's that they have so much information at their fingertips right now. But the resources that they have available are wonderful, and we got to take advantage of those resources.
Yeah.
Because we got to meet them where they are, right? So I don't think we should be talking to our little ones about the murder of George Floyd, about like police brutality. They may be a little bit young. To really ponder some of the inequities in that system. But what we can teach them very early on is this idea of empathy, right? We can teach them help them exercise and grow this muscle of putting ourselves in the shoes of other people, trying to think what they think, feel what they feel. And if we do that, like all these other things that we add to that, when we talk about equity and diversity and inclusion, would make a lot of sense, right? Because they're used to kind of thinking outside of themselves and thinking about other people's perspectives, and that can start early on. So that's the number one thing, and that muscle will serve them well their whole life, right? That's one of those things that that empathy, whether it's leading with empathy, whether it's their relationships with their future partners, like that is always going to serve them really well. Just being a human being that understands what it means to have empathy towards another person. So that's something we can do very early. And another thing that we can do, again, depending on their age, is just exposure. So Vernon Myers has this quote that biases are the stories that we make up about people before we know who they actually are. That's what a bias is. At the heart of it, it's our mind kind of filling in the blank and kind of telling a story about a person when we don't have the information. The reason we struggle in this area with biases is because we don't have real data. We just have glimpses, and we're filling in the blanks. So we're taking we're drawing our conclusions from sources that are not our own experiences. And so exposing our children to stories with diverse characters, hearing those stories of diverse people, like stories centered on diverse people, can get them not only exposure, but it also exercises that empathy muscle that we have, where it's just normal for them to see this level of diversity. Because what I see when I see pushback when it comes to this work is fear. With a lot of older folks, they're fearful of this work for whatever reason. Fear they're going to lose something. Fear that's going to mean, that there's some kind of privilege, I guess, that they're going to not have anymore. So we have to, make sure our children are growing up in a place where it's not a fearful thing to dig into some of these issues, and early exposure help them do that. And one thing I'm noticing, particularly, my youngest is this is a generation. Well, one, they're the most ethnically diverse generation that this country has ever seen. Number two, some of these things that we may be struggling with, they are not struggling with. Things like pronouns and inclusive language, and just really, having this larger view of the world is their everyday, and they are typically, because of what they've been exposed to, they're conscious of some of these issues that some of us are kind of struggling with every day. So they are a generation of activists and people who are not scared to use their voice. They're informed in a lot of ways, and we have to continue as parents to nurture all of that in them.
I like what you're saying, and it's very powerful. And I think I'm going to keep going back to this welcomed, valued, respected, seen, and heard, thing, because it's just so applicable in so many instances at home, at the workplace, wherever, when you're at the grocery store, and a way to bridge between those that we know and feel good about and feel like we don't have to fill in gaps because we know them, and those areas where we lack the knowledge. And I think a lot of it comes down to that we lack the understanding, the knowledge, the education. With so many of us are so ignorant in so many ways, that you gotta put in the work.
So that gets me thinking, Jermaine, you mentioned fear. Mark, you mentioned, a lack of knowledge. And I think, sure, the fear probably a lot of times comes from an assumption that there's a threat, to the way that you've always lived your life, but I think that also sometimes the fear may come from not feeling like you have the language or the tools to address this. And one of the things, after the murder of George Floyd and after, Black Lives Matter really came into the spotlight, that's really, really stuck with me.
Yeah.
Is that it is not the job of a person of color. It's not the job of a person whose sexual orientation is different from mine. It's not the job of a person who suffers from mental illness to teach me as a cisgender white male, to teach me about the history of injustice that they have experienced and that their family has experienced, any underrepresented population has experienced.
You got it.
And I fully respect that. I also genuinely want to learn and be educated about it. I have empathy. I want to learn about it. So how do I learn about it without feeling like I'm pushing a boundary by engaging somebody in conversation about it, in fear of them coming back and saying, it's not my responsibility to teach you. And by no means am I saying poor me.
Yeah. You were just saying, so what you're talking about as I'm understanding is how do I be this ally, right? I want to be an ally to
That's
those.
exactly
and
what it
really
is.
Cool about allyship is intersectional, right? So a white woman can be an ally to Black folks, cisgender person can be an ally to those in the LGBTQ plus community, et cetera, right? So the heart of allyship is it's by nature intersectional. We come alongside those in ally and support. And a part of that allyship is education and learning. But I think you have the approach, hey, I want to be mindful and careful. That's all allies expected to do. And this is what I so appreciate about true allies is this exchange. I always say there's an exchange of my privilege for your struggle. That's what an ally does, right? So I have whatever privilege I have, I'm gonna give some of that to you. And then what I'll take back is your struggle. I'll take some of that from me.
What you said about allyship made me think of a clip that I saw once. I just had to look it up because I couldn't remember the name of the woman. Joy DeGruy.
I love her. Yes.
Okay. She has a fantastic... The trip to the grocery store. Yeah, yes. Exactly. That anyone listening to put some more context or put it into the context of a real world scenario. Yes. I would watch that video. If you just go to YouTube and type Joy DeGruy, DEGRUY, trip to the grocery store. Cause I saw that a long time ago and it has stuck with me, and it's a very powerful story, and it just really embodies what Jermaine was just talking about. What is
the story of an upstander, right? That is what an upstander does, her sister-in-law. Yeah. So good stuff.
Well, I just want to say it's conversations like this that give us parents more tools to put in our toolbox here when it comes to bringing up kids that have everything that you were just talking about, empathy, respect, and understanding. So, Jermaine, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. I feel very invigorated, so I appreciate that. Awesome. And also enjoy the holidays. We wish you and your family just all the best. I don't know how you're going to swing it with kids all over the world, but
I don't know either, but we'll make it
best
work.
of luck.
Yeah. Mark and Adam, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to hang out with you all this morning, and looking forward to staying connected. You have a wonderful holiday as well.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it so much, Jimmy. Thank you. Can I come in? Are you decent?
Oh, come in.
Oh, hey, Adam. Hey, let's just close it out, dude. You've reached the end of another episode of the Modern Dadhood podcast.
Yeah, congratulations.
Congratulations to me or to the listener?
No, to the listener. To the listener.
Ah, yeah.
As I said at the top of the episode, All episodes of this show can be found on our website at moderndadhood.com or on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon Music, or anywhere else you could find podcasts. Please do subscribe. Please leave us a rating and a review, and tell one friend, just one. I mean, you could tell more, but just one would be very helpful. One friend about Modern Dadhood. We've got Instagram and Facebook and YouTube pages. You can find us on all of those platforms. We've got a merchandise store on our website. Just go to moderndadhood.com, where you can find t-shirts. You can find dad hoodies. Still able to order them in time for Christmas. Every order ships with a free sticker.
It's worth the sticker. The sticker alone is worth it. Oh, you know what else you can do? Friend, if that's what you really are, you can drop us a line at hey, at moderndadhood.com. You can write in and you could say, oh, what's up, guys? What's up, guys? Oh, the interview with Jermaine Moore was fantastic. More of that, please. I've just got a couple of thank yous I got to rattle off here. These are really important. I want to say thank you to Casper Baby Pants and Spencer Albee for all of the delicious music that you hear throughout every episode of Modern Dadhood. Mm-hmm. Also to Pete Morris at Red Vault Audio for mixing our show. Give me his website address.
Pete's URL is redvaultaudio.com.
Lastly, I would like to thank Jermaine Moore for taking time out of a busy week. He met with us during the week of Thanksgiving, and he spent a lot of time with us, and he dropped some serious wisdom. So much appreciated to Jermaine Moore. And why don't you take the last one this time, dude?
To our listeners, we want to offer a most sincere thank you for listening.